Pilate is trying to take a middle road between keeping both Rome and the Jews in good spirits, as it were. He'd already upset the Jews quite a lot and upset his authorities quite a lot with some of his strong-handed tactics before with the Jews. So it fits the historical perspective that he was trying to go a middle way. In John 19:12, if you let this man go, you were no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. In Philo's book, to Gaius, chapter 38, verse 301 to 302, Philo shows that the Jews pressurized Pilate in a similar way. The Antonia fortress we find in John 19:13 that soldiers did do various gambling games, and it's not unreasonable to think that they did cast lot for Jesus' garments in John 19:24. In John 19:15, we have no king but Caesar. Seems to be historical, reliable. It shows that this information goes prior to AD 70. They would not have said we have no king but Caesar after AD 70. So it shows it's early historical information. The crucifixion of Jesus in John 19:17-30 can be found in Josephus, Tacitus, Lucian, and Jewish Talmud. John 19:17, the victims of crucifixion did carry the crossbeams. Josephus confirms the crucifixion in the Wars of the Jews in chapter 1 verse 97, chapter 2 305, chapter 7 203 as a way of execution that the Romans used. And we also have an ankle bone of a crucified man with a nail spike that has been found, which was found in 1968. In John 19:17, the execution site would be outside Jerusalem. In John chapter 19:34, the water and blood coming out of Jesus' side is exact medical representation that we know would happen today. And John would not have understood the full medical implications of what he was describing. In John 19:38, Joseph of Arimathea, who was part of the Sanhedrin, would be an unlikely invention. Why would they mention someone who was part of the Sanhedrin? The Sanhedrin would have just denied it, so it has the truth of history about it. Josephus in his Antiquities 1719 199 and John 1939 confirms that there are spices that were used for burials of that time. A demon-possessed woman such as Mary Magdalene in John 20 verse 1 would not be seen as a first eyewitness account in first century Judaism, so that shows that it has historical reliability. Why use a demon-possessed woman as your first eyewitness account? In that culture it would have been seen as crazy, so it has the ring of historical veracity. John chapter 20 verse 15, that Mary thought Jesus was a gardener, is something that the writer would not have invented or made up. Rabboni, John 20:16, which is Aramaic for teacher, is authentic. It's something that the writer would not have invented. Again, in John chapter 20:17, we find the words "my God and your God" is something that a later redactor would not have put in if he was trying to prove Jesus was God. In John 21:11, the number of fishes that was stated has no theological significance, and so seems to be a historical piece of information, and would accord with the tendency of some fishermen of that time who would have liked to brag about large catches of fish. John 21:12, when Jesus' disciples asked Jesus who he was, would have been just exactly the psychological state of mind that the disciples would have been in if they would have seen such a resurrection, and so has historical veracity. In John 21:18, when Jesus tells the fate of Peter, seems vague to draw any theological understanding. The question is, why would John make this up? So, what I'd like to point out there is we've looked at 58. There was 59, but there was one that I'd left out because I didn't think it was strong enough to go in. But there are about 58 historical facts or verifications of the Gospel of John. I think there are a lot more than that, actually. And I think that as skeptics and as Christians, we need to give the Gospels much more respect than our modern culture does. These Gospels had a powerful effect on the history of the West and the East, and it's shambolic that as Christians and atheists we do not read these Gospels. And much of my work recently has been trying to talk about Gospels and get people to think about the Gospels and study the Gospels, because at the heart of all the debates about Christianity, it all comes down ultimately to these Gospels, and we need to study them and work on them more than we have actually done. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you all.